Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is episode 215. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have Misophonia. This week, I'm talking to Stacy Thal, an accomplished brand and creative strategist whose journey with Misophonia began long before it had a name. Stacy takes us through her early experiences participating in a college study on sound sensitivity back in the 80s, her lifelong struggle with trigger sounds, especially from her mom, and how these experiences shaped her personal and professional life. Stacy now reflects on the interplay between her upbringing, her father's bipolar disorder, and her own recovery from food addiction. We dive into how misophonia has affected her relationships, from family dynamics to workplace challenges, and how she's navigated these spaces while maintaining a successful career. It's a deeply personal and thoughtful conversation about coping, connection, and the ongoing need for understanding and research, of course, in the world of misophonia. After the show, let me know what you think. You can reach out to me by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook at Misophonia Podcast. By the way, as always, please head over wherever you listen to the show. If you leave a quick rating, it really helps drive us up in the algorithms and reach more listeners. So my usual announcements: if you want to come on the podcast, just go to misophoniapodcast.com and click the Be a Guest link. Thanks for the incredible ongoing support of our Patreon supporters. If you feel like contributing, you can read all about the various levels at patreon.com/misophoniapodcast. All right, now here's my conversation with Stacy. Stacy, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So do you want to tell us a little bit? I'd like to ask kind of, roughly where you're located, kind of what you do a little bit.
Yeah. After a bazillion years in hyper-urban downtown San Francisco, I'm part of the reluctant mass exodus from the city during the pandemic. And my husband and I desperately needed more space. We were in 900 square feet and found ourselves priced out in concentric circles, and now are in glorious, sunny, quiet, suburban Sacramento, California. So Northern California.
Yeah, very nice. No, I have friends there. I mean, I lived in South of Market, like 7th and Folsom, for a long time, in about 650 square feet. But I left for similar reasons.
No, I was at 5th and Folsom.
Oh, we were neighbors. So I was there from 2010 to 2016. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was there from 2003 to 2020, whatever.
Wow.
Something. Yeah. So I'm sure we crossed paths.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And yeah, I guess kind of, what do you do for work or?
Oh, yeah. I'm a brand and creative strategist. I've been a consultant, startup serving consultant for many, many years. I did a lot of years as well in-house for Google and Walmart and Yahoo, and rode the brand, the top of brand storytelling in the volatile, crazy world of Silicon Valley marketing and advertising for many years. But on and off, I've had my own consultancy as a brand director and creative strategist for a lot of years now. So that's what I do from home, gratefully. I did that before that was a thing.
Yeah. Same with me. It's good to be good to do that. And I'm guessing that also obviously maybe helps with misophonia. Sometimes it doesn't if you have like construction around the house. But
yeah, I think that as I was saying that, it plays into my want to be at home in a controlled environment. I don't know that because of my misophonia, I don't know that I fared well, especially in the Silicon Valley, open
office. Yeah,
yes,
open desk.
that whole thing was not great for me. Not great.
Yeah, not to talk about me, but I when I first got to California and was in a tech company, it was like 2000. I had an office with walls, and then it gradually, turned into just open office, and then just open desk. You can kind of move anywhere, which actually tended to turn into kind of a good thing because it wasn't unusual to just get up and move if and find a quiet place. And so
Yeah.
I don't know that the flexible, yeah, definitely the open office is terrible if your neighbor is sipping Coke or whatever they're doing, but
Oh, yeah.
super flexibility can be helpful, which obviously you get total control at home. Um, so I guess what is it? I guess what is it like at home? Like you have a husband. Is he pretty understanding as well?
Um, I'm hoping that he listens to this,
Yeah.
depending on how it goes. I don't know. I don't talk about it a lot. It
Yeah.
feels like something I got married. I'm 60 years old. I got married at 52 to somebody that was one of my best friends.
Hmm.
So that's lovely. But it's not something that I talk about a bunch. I think I've figured out after all these years how to handle it. And so it's not something that comes up. I've told him about it, but it's not something that we talk about. It's not something that is part of our lives. So I don't think he knows much about it. And it wasn't until one of my besties, my very besties, identified herself as having misophonia that and is near Duke University and started listening to some webinars and things like that on that we started talking about, she and I, what our experiences were, similar and different.
Yeah, it's
So
not unusual that I guess it's not. We don't put a spotlight on it at home
yeah,
necessarily for various reasons.
yeah,
Um, sorry, you said your one of your best friends has misophonia as well.
yeah. It's
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah.
I identify as a food addict,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if this plays into it at all, but I have found certainly that the people that I gravitate toward in that fellowship, several of them identify as having misophonia. And a
Mm.
lot of them, when I started talking about when I, self-diagnosed and started looking into that what I felt like was an oversensitivity in my own, whatever my temperament,
Yeah.
actually had a name and had growing research around it, not so much treatment, but growing research around it. It wasn't until I started talking about it that people started saying, "Oh, I have that too. Oh, I have that experience too." And not a lot of people I found were familiar with that whatever moniker, diagnosis, label, whatever. But in my recovery community, people that identify as addicts, I find a lot of people who, women in particular,
Mm.
who suffer from this whatever disorder.
Yeah. And I guess around when did you were you able to identify and self-diagnose and find out that it has a name and whatnot?
Yeah, it took a long time. I felt like growing up that there was just something wrong with me, that it was my own quirky,
Mm.
oversensitive makeup. Um, but I remember when I was in college, now this is in the 80s, that somebody that was in the psychology department, a peer of mine, a student there, was doing a study for their thesis or whatever. I don't know. Some sort of study there where they started talking about, there was like some flyer or something. Do you have a hard time, like, when people chew, does it make you enraged when people slurp their coffee or whatever it is? We're doing a study on this thing. I was like, what? Like so many other things in college, having this, you know, relatively universal experience that I thought was this quirky malady that I had, this quirky singular experience I was having. I learned that other people were having it too. I don't remember that there was a name for it at the time, or that they shared that there was a name for it. But I remember feeling heartened that I wasn't alone. So that was whatever in the 1980s. And then
That's
but it
fascinating.
wasn't.
Can I ask? Sorry, what university
Oh,
that
sorry. Yeah,
was?
I went to UC Berkeley.
Okay, wow,
Hmm.
wow. Okay, Was it like undergrads who were doing it, random
Yes,
undergrads, or okay, okay,
as far as I
interesting.
can remember. I mean, this
Yeah,
was a
you wouldn't
long.
remember their names or anything that I can kind of Google for a paper
No, I'm
that's
sorry.
typewritten. Okay, no worries. It's just amazing that you even mentioned that. That's very cool. Okay,
Yeah, that was cool.
yeah,
Yeah, it made me feel less alone.
yeah.
But it was, I had my own business as a consultant for a decade, and then I went in house and I started being really, I noticed, bothered by the behavior of others, and I thought, well, I'm just a jerk. I thought I was
Mm-hmm.
just a jerk. But then I started Googling it, right? I started trying to look into it myself, and I think I stumbled upon the name misophonia. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I haven't talked about it that much. Misophonia, um,
Yeah, we usually just misophonia. Yeah.
misophonia, misophonia. So misophonia. I think I found that word, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like about 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, self-diagnosed from there. But what I can tell you, and I don't know if this is helpful for anybody that might be listening, but I was diagnosed as a kid with a hearing loss, a significant hearing loss in one of my
Mm.
ears. So in my left ear, I had ear infections, like sore throats and stuff like that, but ear infections where I had a, ear, nose, and throat doctor on call during my youth, grade school age. And every year they would do the hearing test, the whatever van would pull up or whatever the trailer would pull up, and they would have you go in there and raise your finger if you could hear the things. And every year they would tell my parents, oh my God, she's got some hearing loss. Um, and it was from ear infections that I had as a kid that blew out my hearing on the high end and the low end. So I have the mid range still,
Mm-hmm.
but what it causes for me, as well as, especially, and as I get older, this is getting more significant for me, but in crowded spaces, let's say like a restaurant that's like a louder restaurant where maybe they have music going as well,
Yeah.
my hearing gets really muddied. It's very difficult for me to hear then. And this has been, true for many years. Like I said, it's escalating now, but I thought maybe it had something to do with that,
Mm-hmm.
trying to self-diagnose. But mainly I was just having this kind of horrible experience for all sorts of reasons. But one of them, in this open, desk environment, working in the Silicon Valley, having a really hard time with people. And and the way that it expressed itself for me was that I really interpreted it as inconsideration on
Mm-hmm.
the part of others. So I had some awareness that I was oversensitive, but mostly my first reaction was, "My God, can you close your mouth when you're chewing?"
Yep.
Um, and I remember it specifically that I had somebody that was, down the row of desks from me who would eat at her desk every day. Beyond
Monster.
her chewing, though, there was
Yeah.
this clanking of her fork or spoon against her plate,
Yeah.
that would just like drive me mad, just make me feel enraged. And so it became hard for me to, I don't know, survive, let alone thrive in that environment. And I think, circling back, that's part of, um, a central part of my want to be a consultant and work from home is to be able to protect myself and others from that reaction, right?
Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, we initially it's that disgust, inconsiderate kind of reaction that comes out instantaneously, and that's kind of what others see when they see us react. They think that they take it personally
Mhm.
because they think it's all about them when it's actually something in us that is not interpreting these
Yeah.
sounds in
Well, it's a hard thing to do because people are just being themselves and
a usually, yeah.
eating. Yeah,
Yeah,
usually, right, right. It's not wrong. Maybe they are being
right.
inconsiderate. Maybe they could close their mouths, right? So not wrong. But especially in that environment, the pressure to, contain myself when they were doing whatever they were doing, just being
Yeah.
themselves, was really difficult. I did not. I gratefully I can report that I didn't like even under incredible pressure. I worked at an agency for a while where it was very deadline driven, and I was in senior leadership, and it was really, an enormous amount of work and lots of anxiety there. I didn't go off on anyone. I would just kind of implode and get
Yeah.
more and more silent myself,
Yep. Shut
and
down.
then try
Yep.
to do all the things, employ headphones and do like noise canceling headphones with
Mm-hmm.
white noise or something like that to try to drown all that stuff out. But then I remember on a performance review that I got, how they say whatever 7,000 nice things, but you focus on the one thing, that an area of improvement or whatever. And it was for me, they said all sorts of, wonderful, flattering things about me. But the one thing that they said is that, in times of stress, people are afraid to come by your desk and approach you because you seem like so intense
Yeah.
and I was like so offended by that. Like, what? Like I'm the nicest person. I'm the one,
Yeah.
in the break rooms, like, oh my God, hey, great shoes. Where'd you get those? Or whatever,
Yeah.
trying to razzmatazz people and keep it light and fun. And I was so discouraged to hear that people were intimidated by approaching me and felt like I was, um, I don't know, like intense and didn't want to come near me or angry. But what I was really trying to do was survive, right?
That's interesting. I've never had someone else say something similar to that, but that's kind of how I feel. I feel like sometimes my signals are being misinterpreted,
Mm, mm,
and because yeah, I'm normally the hey, let's go to happy hour, blah 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 blah. But then a lot of the time people see me kind of intense. I may be recovering from a trigger of one instantaneous moment, but it has nothing to do with my overall kind of mood,
right.
and people get the wrong signal. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I
So
wonder, I've got a
yeah, go.
question for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wonder if, in all the conversations that you've had and in your own experience, that it really comes down to particular people. Before I did that study, when I was at Berkeley, I remember feeling ashamed because, and I hate to say this out loud because I love my mother more than any human on this earth. And we have a wonderful relationship.
Here it
But I
comes.
was always, yeah, driven mad by the way she ate. Like I
Hmm.
couldn't look at her. Like the older I got,
Yep.
I could not bear watching her eat, and the sounds that she made. And it actually, I feel like I don't know what this is, and I wonder if you've ever heard of it, but where I have like hand gesture misophonia, where
Hmm.
there's some way in which she expresses herself with her hands and the ways that she eats. And I know I have a girlfriend that feels the same way, where I was convinced that it was some kind of, before I did this, Berkeley study, and maybe it's still part of the thing, but it was some sort of primal thing, right? We were monkeys for a lot longer than we've been upright humans. And so I was thinking this is some vestige of some sort of primal thing where if we were in this tribe of monkeys, that the natural progression would be for me to kill my mother or something, or differentiate from her, or go to some other tribe or something like that, right? Go to some other group.
Yep.
And that was part of the primal, like pushing me out of the nest kind of thing. Have you heard of that? Like people, specific humans or family members or?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, yeah, in most cases, it does start and linger with those early family members. Did for me, did for like pretty much most people. I'm not sure exactly why. Why so why it's so common, but I mean, I have lots of ideas as other people do on why it starts at kind of a young age with the family. Because I mean, you are around with them the most. There's also things happening in the environment that could influence your body to kind of identify hearing as a warning to some kind of danger. And if your family
Mm,
is around, that just kind of maybe associates. Um, the hand gestures, I mean, the visual triggers that are so commonly associated with misophonia, that makes a lot of sense too.
okay.
the hand gestures maybe don't make a sound, so that's maybe a little bit different. A lot of people think of they use the term misokinesia. I think it's kind of all related. I think this is all a sensory in general kind of issue, and hearing just happens to be something people. I think I may be digressing. I think hearing becomes the most if this is a sensory warning. And to your point about monkeys, I mean, yeah, I think uh, there had to be some members of the tribe that just had to be more sensitive to certain things. You know, we're all an evolutionary experiment, so we're not all sensitive to the same things. So whether you or I are meant to be in 2025 or 1980 or whatever extra sensitive to sound, whether we have to be, maybe not, but I think there is some early genetic component along with some environmental uh, influences. So yeah, I mean these are things that I definitely talk about in terms of where this could be coming from and how it might be related to these some seemingly random hand gestures and whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Thank
that made any sense. I kind of digressed
Yeah,
all over
no,
the
it
place.
did. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that's the whole point. I felt very alone in this for a really long time and thought it
Hmm.
was, again, like some kind of character flaw and something to be ashamed of rather than a semi common disorder in degrees that other people experience.
Yeah, yeah, and that shame and guilt, especially as our triggers that we don't, our reactions that we don't even understand, are seen by others and then taken personally. A lot of us, we just kind of like just bottle it up even more, and that just perpetuates the issue and makes things worse. I think because it just the nervous system is just even more I don't know, wounded, wounded or on edge or what
Yeah,
have you.
yeah, exactly.
Did your parents? So I guess do you want to tell me maybe around when things started for you? Unless you've already covered that, I forget now. We talked about your mom a
Um,
little bit.
yeah, we talked about it a little bit. I don't know that I really noticed it. Maybe in adolescence, I
Mm,
had this because I had awareness about my reaction to my mom's eating
yeah,
when I went off to college. And that's why, seeing that flyer struck me and being part of that study struck me was because I, again, thought that I was alone in this experience and it was something to be ashamed of and worked on. That was my own personal quirk, right?
yeah.
Um, like bad daughter. And that's mainly the way that it manifested, although I don't it's odd that, I had it with boyfriends as well,
Mm,
where, like many, boyfriends could do no wrong in the beginning, but once they became more human, as you got to know
yes.
them better, spent more time together, there was more familiarity and intimacy, um, their eating and especially, like, slurping, like hot
Yeah.
coffee or something like that would just drive me mad, and I even observed this, with my own husband now that I think I went for years with and so this is a part that's, mysterious for me,
Mm-hmm.
is that I went for years with nothing that he would do would bother me at all, but now it doesn't bother me when he eats, but it bothers me when he slurps. The
Right.
particular sound drives me mad, and I can tell that, I don't know how to connect the dots, but what I can tell, I think, is that he's getting some pleasure out of that, what I think is unnecessary slurping. It's not like he's trying to make the coffee, like blowing on the coffee to make it cooler so that he can drink it or drink it faster.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
something in like almost like a baby blowing bubbles or something in a bathtub, like I'm going, this is a deep cut now, but
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll have him listen to this podcast after all. But the way in which he, to my mind, unnecessarily slurps on his coffee,
Yep.
um, now suddenly I would say in the last couple of years drives me mad where I didn't notice it. I was oblivious to it previously. So I don't know again what that is about, like a growing sense of attachment and intimacy like a family. We have become this kind of family of two where now it's bothering me. So I don't know what that is. But maybe they'll find out someday. But what I do is I subtly, because he's just being him,
Right.
I subtly just plug my ears when I sit next to him. And
Mm-hmm.
while he can see me doing that gesture, he has never, ever, in these last few years that I've been doing this, ever asked me about it.
Gotcha.
So I
Gotcha.
don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
what to say, but I don't know that I would ask him to change his behavior
Mm-hmm.
for me because he's not doing anything wrong, even if it would help me, because I have this kind of workaround that I do. But there is that moment where maybe I'm not paying attention, where there's suddenly this
Yeah.
slurping noise where like immediately I am just enraged. I am
Right.
like I don't even, yeah, it's hard to articulate what that sound is. It's almost like how I experience it experientially, viscerally, is like when you're a kid and somebody tickles you, but then they
Mm-hmm.
hold you down and it goes too far. Like they
Mm-hmm.
tickle you and it starts to hurt, and then you're suddenly crying. Like
Yeah.
that's
That's
what
a
it feels like.
fascinating analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that's what it feels like. That's the kind of experience that I have with it.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting analogy. Yeah, for me, yeah, I think it feels like someone just grabs me by surprise, and just wants to shake me up, like shake me or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it does hijack you. I mean, that's what's
Yes.
interesting, right? Is that it adds a layer of what I feel is already my distractible nature. Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
the best sleeper. I'm a light sleeper. Movement, sound, change in light or temperature can disturb my sleep. So I definitely identify as sort of having a sensitive nervous system. I think that that's part of the uh,
Mm-hmm.
nature nurture part of what the building blocks of what I my addiction that I have that expresses itself primarily in food. Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's mysterious.
Yeah. Have you heard the term highly sensitive person?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I identify as that for sure, but there's some
Yeah.
sort of, I don't know, cluster of things. I
Yeah.
feel like I've been in this recovery program for 20 years now, and 20 years abstinent, the equivalent of sober, like in AA, Alcoholics
Mm-hmm.
Anonymous, not having a drink. So in the program that I do that's called Food Addicts and Recovery Anonymous, I haven't had flour and sugar for 20 years, and I weigh and measure my food without exception now for 20 years now.
Wow.
And and so that's a bit of a petri dish, of being able to observe myself and others and what
Mm-hmm.
we bring in. And it feels like there's some sort of cluster of all these things that go together that my highly sensitive person nature um, is part of either what set me up for addiction or what had me seeking um, soothing outside myself from a really young age. I was a thumb sucker,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a little, security blanket far past like Linus, from the Peanuts,
Yeah.
long past when it was cute. So I was always looking to soothe myself, and food was, a good way to take the edge off my little tiny self. Didn't have a mortgage, didn't have all the worries that I have
Right.
today, but had a sensitive soul. Yeah, had a sensitive nervous system or something where I was always looking to soothe myself. And at some point, like happens with other people with addiction, food caught for me. I tried other things, but I
Mm-hmm.
medicated myself with food. I can see that now looking back that I used food, as we say in recovery, as a drug, but I used it specifically as anti-anxiety medication,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Yeah.
worked until it didn't work. It didn't show up on my body. And then I became morbidly obese and, spent years trying to do something about that. But it wasn't until I got into recovery and discovered things, again in this petri dish of thousands of people that are with this shared disease, allergy, however you want to look at addiction, that draws, that one of the common denominators is a lot of highly sensitive people in there.
Yeah. Did you growing up? Do you have noticeable anxiety? Well, I mean, you had this security blanket going on. Were you ever? I don't know. parents ever take you in to see a therapist or anything? I'm just kind of curious.
No, it never.
Yeah.
I think I was pretty. It's a great question. I remember identifying as fearful,
Uh huh.
um, in grade school. That I was smart enough somehow to be able to observe others and to see that things for me hit harder and lasted longer, it seemed, than others. I didn't have the ability to just kind of like water off a duck's back or whatever. I didn't really have those skills.
Yeah.
But I didn't have any other manifestations. I didn't I wasn't a, whatever, a cutter. I didn't at that time have an overt eating disorder, that would need help. And I had really, like parents that encouraged me to bring my, thoughts and feelings and dreams and all that stuff to them. Very communicative, very loving, very skilled in that way to bring, all my stuff to them. So I wasn't hiding
Mm-hmm.
my anxieties, but I did grow up in a household with a father who was diagnosed, manic depressive when it was called before it was called, more currently bipolar. And so my house was, volatile.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I didn't have the room to feel my feelings there because my dad had a hard time with his own, and mine were particularly hard for him. Like if I would have great upsets, stupid playground stuff was really hit hard for me. But I didn't have, I bit my nails and they would try. So that feels like now looking back that was an anxiety thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they tried to cure that, right? Like that, rather than looking at it from a psychological standpoint, coming at it more of bad habits, you know?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Back then, it was more about right
Yeah.
fixing bad habits,
Right,
not
right. It was
not
more
getting to
like
the root.
through
Yeah.
that frame, so I didn't really get any help, and I don't know that I needed it because I felt, like, super supported for the most part on the home front. Um, yeah, and it wasn't until, much later that I got into any therapy, and mostly that was centered around, "Why can't I stop eating?"
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Okay, okay. And I guess so. If things were kind of were super, it sounds very supportive at home, but also kind of volatile sometimes.
Yeah,
Would that? How would that manifest? Like your dad would just have a big temper, or just get very emotional,
yeah, I think,
having yeah,
like, classic changeable. My dad
yeah.
was, to this day, just, like, couldn't love me more. I'm an only child. We
Mm-hmm,
had, very always lived in really small places, so we were on top of each other all the time, so it
mm-hmm,
was this little, tribe of 3. It was, a lot of, around each otherness, but my dad, yeah, was changeable, most days when I would come home from school he was an artist, and gave that up after some time and became Mr. Mom, and my mom went to work and kinda held up the family. And so we would, like many families, come together at the end of the day, me from school, my mom from work, and my dad having been there all day long. And so I never knew what I would, walk into. He was most of the time a loving, wonderful family, and our home was one of warmth and, again, great communication and good humor and,
mm-hmm,
wonderful, like artistic stuff and watching movies together and very great. But then sometimes, I would come home and something had triggered him and he would be in a mood,
mm-hmm,
either a kind of hyper mood where it would be like suddenly he'd want to take pictures and he'd make my mom and I like dress up in certain ways and pose in the
mm,
house and do different things and he'd be in some sort of manic state. But, more often the expression was, some kind of rage where he
mm-hmm,
would, ultimately, after hours of screaming, threaten suicide.
mm,
So there was that,
okay.
and that happened. I don't know now, in my highly sensitive self. I don't know how many times that happened.
Mm-hmm,
It happened enough. It wasn't a couple times in my
yeah.
childhood. It wasn't weekly, it wasn't monthly, but it was enough times a year throughout the years
Hmm.
to make an impression and hardwire me to a certain degree where, you know, it certainly threatened the stability in our home for sure.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I know it's, yeah, not great memories, but I just ask these kinds of questions because I've talked to enough people that I've heard stories that kind of, I don't know, kind of maybe rhyme with that kind of background. And I think people, I think this kind of stuff helps people maybe, I don't know, connect some dots or maybe think about how, a child could have developed these warning signals, like I need to listen for things, I need to like be on the lookout for what mood somebody might be in, um and then this maybe turns into kind of something of a disorder later, like
Yeah.
misophonia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that kind of hypervigilance, as
hmm,
a kid and then going out on my own
yep,
after having this sort of, rural existence, this insular family, going from this tiny, life to 35,000 people on the UC Berkeley campus and living at the dorms and stuff like that. It really escalated for me when there was all that stimuli. I went from being my backyard was a national forest to, super urban Berkeley with all that stimuli. And this is not an uncommon experience for lots of kids who
right.
go off to school. But for me, I think, yeah, that was just very clear that I was easily overwhelmed by all the sensory input.
Hmm. Hmm. So do your parents now know of your misophonia? Do you talk to them at all about it?
I think I said something to them in passing about it, but I don't know that I
Okay.
have
Yeah.
shared, not out of hiding anything,
Right.
but sort of like, or not anything like private, because we are generally open books with each other, for better and for worse,
Hmm.
over the years. But I don't know that I think I talked to my mom about it, my mom maybe and my dad some years ago when I connected the dots, but not since then because again, sort of like with my husband and the slurping thing, where I've been able to, handle it on my
Yeah.
own and not need to burden them with asking them or requesting that they change their own human behavior to accommodate mine, right?
Right.
I've been able to handle it myself.
Right. So your mom still does her gestures, and you got your ways to.
Yeah, and I don't know what to say about that. Like, what do you
Yeah.
like, don't I don't know, don't
What do
usually
you do? I guess do you look away or move to another room?
I do, I look away and then
Yeah.
I tell my friends about it. I think, you know?
Yeah.
And what's great about that is that, yeah, there's just a great sense of community in that. I have a few good friends that suffer from the same thing that feels, intolerable, inexplicable,
Yeah.
mysterious, but real at the same time. And yeah, I don't know. I feel better when I talk about it for sure.
Yeah. And no, that's great that you have more than just your best friend. You got other close friends that you can
Yeah.
quickly send a text to.
Yeah.
You know. I guess, yeah. What about like just going out in the like grocery shopping or just kind of going out in the real world? How do you cope? I guess noise canceling headphones maybe,
I don't
or
that's
just.
not yeah, that for me, whatever expression I have of
Mhm.
misophonia, that doesn't bother me. I think it's again, it's kind of like, I don't know, more, uh, I have it with my in-laws. Um, I can I can barely eat with them. It's very hard, so I avert
Mm,
my eyes,
yeah.
and I try to get out of it if I can. Um,
So very much the visual triggers around eating with
yes.
your in-laws. It's not just sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, because I cannot have the visual and the sound at the same time.
Yeah. That's a
That would
lot.
drive me mad. So if I have to pick, yeah, there's something that amplifies that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah? Okay. So I just try to like look away, I try
Yeah.
not to look. And then if we are out to dinner, like with the more broad family or something like that, I will try to seat myself away from them so that they're not in my eye line. I can't bear it. I don't know. I don't know. I can't bear it. It's really a tough one for me. But out and about, and again, I told you like this, the muddiness that happens with my hearing out in restaurants is hard for me. But it's more about the intimate setting of things.
Yeah.
But I will say this is a very deeply personal thing, but it is centered around eating, which is interesting since I whatever
Mm-hmm.
identify as a food addict. But it isn't with sex and the sounds that come with that are very human sounds as well,
Right.
or even whatever other kinds of body functions. That doesn't trigger me, but it really is the eating thing, and then other repetitive sounds. Also, low sounds, I can't bear that.
Mm-hmm. Bass
Like,
sounds kind of thing.
yeah, or like sitting in my house, and what is that noise? What is that?
Uh-huh.
What is that? What is that? Um, and the other thing that drives me mad is, oh my God, there is some. So this is, yeah, it's a visual and a sound thing together that I get enraged. Like I have to walk away. I have to get up and walk away when the TV picture is out of sync with the sound.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And I don't know if that was, I kept thinking like, oh, maybe it's because of my hearing loss. And maybe all these years I've been doing more compensating than I thought through lip reading.
Mm.
And when that is out of sync, it drives me a bit mad, more than a bit mad. But maybe it's a misophonia, thing. Maybe it's,
Or
a
the sensory, whatever the sensory thing is.
sensory
Yeah.
thing. Yes,
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Fascinating. Yeah. No, that also irks me as well.
Yeah.
But it comes up a lot in our modern streaming culture. Not everything's in sync all the time.
Yeah, it drives me mad, especially if like I'm getting ready to just like relax and have an evening, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
something that's out of sync, and then I get inflamed that I look over at my husband and I say, "Is that not bothering you?" And he's like, "What?" It's out of sync, and he doesn't even see it. It can be very subtle.
Right.
Had some problems with our TV and our sound bar and whatever technology around that.
Yeah.
We had real problems where we had to, like do a lot of troubleshooting where there
Yep.
was real out of sync problem. But
Yeah.
sometimes yeah, like in the streaming world, sometimes there's this subtle lag that just, yeah, drives me mad.
Right. 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 No, fascinating. Hey, Stacy, and I know we have a hard stop
Yeah.
in a little while, but so yeah, kind of didn't want to go too long here, but yeah, I mean, yeah, this is I mean, anything else? You've been thinking about this one. I know you haven't really had a chance other than your close friends to talk about it. Anything else? I don't know you want to share about your experiences or even questions for me.
Yeah, I wonder what you think is going on
Mm,
with this. What the I think at my age now, I always have curiosity, about what is happening with my mind and my body, and try to do the best I can to do my due diligence and adjust for those things or treat those things or get professionals in to treat
yeah,
them. Um, but it seems to be in all the research I've done is that for now, there hasn't been a lot of money thrown at studying this. And so there aren't a lot of thoughts about treatment. But I wonder, if you have any tips or tricks or what you found, or if you know of any studies that would be helpful to me, you, others, that could have hopeful treatment for this, because the psychological part of it is a challenge.
yeah. No, that's a great question. You're right. There hasn't been a lot. There's really only like one $10 million fund that is kind of um, giving by far the most amount of money to various studies. And yeah, I get to see a lot of those studies. I helped write a book with Dr. Jane Gregory at Oxford about misophonia, kind of a self-help book.
Wow.
It came
Great.
out a couple of years ago, and that's kind of very more I guess kind of the CBT focused, kind of what to do, how to think about, how to reframe what
What's it
you're
called?
feeling. It's called Sounds Like Misophonia is the name of the
Okay.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you'll see my name on the cover, but Dr. Jane Gregory. Yeah, that's kind of if you want to search for that. That's all coming. That'd be yeah, interesting one to get. And that was really the first book published by a major publisher on Misophonia. It's by Bloomsbury.
Wow.
Everything else has been kind of self-published. So yeah, so I mean that and a lot of the treatments and studies, or at least the mainstream ones, are kind of CBT focused around how to deal with the sounds in the moment, kind of how to reframe what you're thinking, to avoid going into kind of like a that the misophonia death spiral. But I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in kind of some of the stuff we talked about revolving around the patterns I've seen as to kind of what happened kind of growing up. As we're growing up, we're
Hmm.
young humans. We have, like you alluded to, like we have millions of years of a genetic background. There's also the real phenomena of epigenetics, which is kind of
Yeah.
how um, things can be passed down from your immediate predecessors, like a bipolar father, or just anything that can happen kind of in a sort of small t traumatic way, either to yourself or to a parent or grandparent. That gets all rolled in with what's happening in the environment. And as a child, if you were maybe not, maybe you experience things like, for example, like you did, like I have had, and like many others have had. Maybe it's not processed completely, and your body needs to get ready for the next experience. So it's going to naturally look at its tools, and one of the strongest ones is hearing. Hearing is the hardest sense, I think, to block, right? So it's the best thing to kind of give you advanced warning of something. You can shut your ears, but you can't not hear something. You can't like not feel that, you know, through that sense. You can not touch something, you can not eat something, you can not smell something, but hearing is kind of one of the best warning signs. So
Totally.
I feel there's something there that needs to be
Yeah.
studied. I don't think anyone is studying it in a way that I find satisfactory. Uh, and so I think I'm interested in root causes of things, because I think if we can, and there are therapists that focus on that. How do we process that old um, trauma in a way that can kind of like take away the that danger feeling that has carried with us into adulthood. So
Yeah.
that's my wow,
Sense.
that's not a bad summary.
Yeah.
But
Thank you
yeah.
for summing that up. That was great.
So yeah, hopefully that helps. And I think there are. By the way, I think this year I know of at least one other book that's coming out that is going to lean more into what I just talked about, by someone who's been uh, working with misophonia patients for years. So keep an ear out. I'll keep you posted too.
No pun intended, y'all.
Yeah, yeah. Right. A lot of puns, but yeah, I don't know. That's unless you have anything else to share. I want to say, yeah, thanks for coming on and sharing a lot of this. You haven't talked to a lot of people, and then thanks for like being so open with some personal stories. I think it's going to help a lot of
Yeah.
people.
Thank you so much. I sure hope it helps. I think I spent a lot of time, again, not wrong about other people's inconsideration, which is an
Right.
Achilles heel for me for sure.
Let's be clear.
Yeah,
Some people are not considered.
yeah, not wrong for sure, but it has plagued me. And I think
Hmm.
that, the misophonia is a big contributor to that. And that's the first reaction to this is someone else being inconsiderate, and how dare they? Me being,
Yeah.
leading with caring about people, and, consideration being a high value of mine. But no need to suffer in silence. Again, no pun intended.
Right.
There are plenty of us out here.
Yep. Yep. Very true. Well,
All right.
thanks
Thank
again,
you so
Stacy.
much.
Thanks again, Stacy. Fascinating chat, from the personal stories of relationships with partners and family members to that fascinating memory of the Berkeley study in the 80s. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review. or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's even easier just to send a message on Instagram at misophoniapodcast. You can follow there or on Facebook at Misophonia Podcast, and on X it's Misophonia Show. Support the show by visiting Patreon at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. The music, as always, is by Moby. Until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.